Hi, I'm Jen from Tea Leaves and Tweed, and welcome to Isolation Baking. This week, in honor of our beautiful spring day and the May Day festival that is coming up at the end of this week, I've decided to make fairy cakes. I'm using a recipe from Baking with Mary Berry, one of my cookbooks that my toddler has recently decided is one of his favorite books to read. He'll actually pull the book off the shelf and go through it and point at every picture and say, ooh. So I decided that I would make something out of the book and see if he liked it as well as the picture. So we're going to make orange blossom fairy cakes. So let's bake. So we're starting with butter. Now the recipe calls for 10 tablespoons of butter, but I only took out one stick, which is 8 tablespoons. So I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of ghee, which is clarified butter, to make up the difference. And I'm just going to cream these together. Now I'm using salted butter because I'm running very low of unsalted butter right now, and because the original cake recipe calls for self-rising flour, which has salt in it already. So the recipe doesn't call for any salt, so I decided to let the salt be in the butter instead of in the flour. Then it calls for 2/3 of a cup of granulated sugar. So I candied some orange peel yesterday to use as decoration, and when I rolled them in sugar, I was left with a lot of excess, and I decided that this excess sugar would be wonderful saved and used in the cupcakes. It might have a little bit of that orange flavor to it. So here is 2/3 of a cup of granulated sugar. And you'll just want to cream these together until they're nice and fluffy. So now I've got my butter and sugar creamed together, and it's time to add the eggs. Now the recipe calls for 3 eggs, and I'm going to add them one at a time. And you just want to kind of beat until it's mostly incorporated. And there is the 3rd. And then I'm also going to add little splash of orange blossom water and the zest of an orange. And we will save this orange for later. And mix that all in. And now we just need 1 cup and a quarter of flour. There's a cup. And a quarter. And 2 teaspoons of baking powder, because the original recipe calls for self-rising flour. But this is regular flour. And you just want to mix this together until it's combined. So now we just want to scrape around the bowl and make sure there are no dry bits of flour. And now it's time to get this into paper cases. So I've got my muffin tin lined with baking cups. And of course, these would typically be made as miniature cupcakes and make 24 mini cakes. However, I do not have a miniature muffin pan and I can't just pop over to my mom's and borrow hers right now. So I'm going to make do with rather large fairy cakes. And I like to use 2 spoons to scrape the mix into the cases. Now, you want to be a little bit conservative with how far you fill your cups. You should get 12 cakes out of this recipe because these cakes are iced with a somewhat thin flowing icing, and you want to have a little bit of the paper case around the cupcake and not have it domed up over the paper so that the paper can kind of hold the icing in place. So now my little cakes are ready for the oven. I'm going to bake these at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 15 minutes, maybe 20, or until a cake tester comes out clean. And then I'll meet you back here to ice them and have them with some tea once they've cooled completely. So now our cupcakes have been baked and they've cooled completely, so I'm going to make the icing. I have the juice of half an orange. I'm gonna add a splash of orange blossom water to that. Maybe just a teaspoon or 2. And I'm going to add that to about a cup of powdered sugar. This is probably a little thin. This is a very thin kind of glaze style icing. But I don't like thick icing, so this will be fine for me. If you want it to be thicker, I would recommend adding your orange juice a little bit at a time until it reaches the consistency that you like. So I'm going to drizzle some of this on one of my cupcakes. And then top it with a pretty little piece of candied orange peel. So you can see we have our pretty little orange blossom cupcake. I'm going to go make myself a cup of tea and join you back here to give it a taste. So now what better accompaniment for a springtime cupcake than a cup of fresh spring green tea. So today I'm drinking the Emerald Buds green tea from White to Tea along with my orange blossom cupcake. The glaze is very sticky. The orange and the orange blossom flavor comes through very strongly. It's delicious. It's one of my favorite flavors. It is dripping all over me. Particularly nice with this very juicy, bright green tea. It's very fresh. Well, I'm gonna go and enjoy my cupcake, my fairy cake. I hope you enjoyed this isolation baking session where we made orange blossom fairy cakes from Mary Berry's cookbook, Baking with Mary Berry. And I hope you'll join me again sometime. Bye.